All right, and we are back. Peanut Gallery, take it away.
All right, so I did a little bit of research today into why women's wrestling in Japan is so strong in terms of its popularity and why it sustained that popularity where other women and women's wrestling promotions around the world had failed. And I think that there are three key reasons, and I think all three of them were showcased. And the first one I want to talk about is the fact that Japan has separate women's and men's wrestling promotions.
And they've had this for a very long time.
They've had it for a very long time. Now, the theory behind this is that when you have a mixed gender wrestling promotion, there are eras in which women are cast a little bit differently. They're not booked the best. So you have eras like the Attitude Era where they're booked as eye candy. You have Ruthless Aggression. You have, the Women's Revolution. And I'm just talking from the perspective of the United States.
And we're even going back to maybe even to the 40s when they were booked as special attractions, not like as main roster.
But in Japan, because they were women-only promotions, they were booked much better. And a great example that someone brought up is someone like Gail Kim in WWE, who is arguably one of the greatest professional wrestlers in the 2000s era, but we just didn't get to see her full potential within the WWE because of how she was booked. Now you compare that to her time in TNA, and she really got to showcase what she was capable of.
A night and day difference.
And so I think that having that separation really helps, especially in the 90s when women's wrestling in the States was not very popular. It was very popular in Japan. The second reason I want to highlight is the fact that they were much more innovative. You had women's death matches like what you see here long before WWE and the like even thought about putting women in matches like this.
Right.
So the room that they had for innovation, not just in character development and in usage, but also in the styles of matches that they were able to perform. And a lot of the most popular women Japanese wrestlers out of the 90s were people that participated in these hardcore death matches, for example. So, and I think a lot of it too brings me to my third point is that they're much more marketable. And by that, I mean, if you look at Japanese culture in general, you see that there's just a lot of merchandise. There's a lot of things around characters. And when you have more colorful characters, you tend to get more merchandise out of them. That's just how Japanese culture is. Women's professional wrestling in Japan really got to highlight a lot of that Japanese culture along with the way that they dress, for example.
In Japanese culture, some of their most popular like pop stars and stuff like that, they're women. And they've been that way for a very long time as well.
Yep. Whereas in America and in other places around the world, women are not booked that way. They're not merchandised that way.
Well, not back then, but now they are. We're a little bit behind the curve as it relates to marketable women.
Right. And it's not very known outside of Japan. These women wrestling promotions are not very well known outside of Japan, but they do produce a lot of great stars, as we were able to see tonight. And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to see a lot more of them do these excursions out to the States to kind of showcase their talent there. You think in the WWE, you think of a character like Asuka, and you look at how colorful she is and how marketable her merchandising is and her brand and her style. That is essentially what we saw tonight with Stardom.
Yeah, look at like Awesome Kong is another great example where it was a gaijin, but she really became popular in Japan, and when she went to TNA,
because of the character that she was able to develop,
and also that style of a hard-hitting woman, that was very different, even back in the day.
So, I mean, that's pretty much in a nutshell why women's professional wrestling in Japan is so popular. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I will. Yes, I do, actually. I think the points that you have made are going to be illustrated a lot more when we get to the wrestling lesson, because there is a big correlation between why the Japanese women's wrestling is so popular now to the history of Japanese women's wrestling, because they are very tightly correlated with each other.
Right, and they all know each other. It's just this huge circuit. But yeah, that's kind of what I got. It's just very hard hitting. It's the style of Japanese wrestling that you're used to, but with women.
Yep, exactly. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about the history of women's wrestling in Japan, and that will be here in a minute.